Welcome to Future Forward, a limited series of conversations with diverse documentary filmmakers about our future during the crises of 2020. I'm your host, Anjanette Levert. I am a filmmaker, professor, curator, programmer, and coach in the documentary sphere. Future Forward has been made possible by Spelman College's Carnegie Rockefeller Divisional Priority Faculty Award, where I am a lecturer in our recently created documentary film program. This series was inspired by the author Arundhati Roy. She wrote an article early in the global coronavirus crisis called "The Pandemic is a Portal." There's a beautiful yet haunting close to the articles that stayed with me. In essence, it says, these crises are an opportunity to break from the past and reimagine our world. I've been meditating on that both personally and professionally. And what I remembered is that I've been having these conversations with other BIPOC filmmakers, and I decided I wanted to record the thoughts of some of the best and the brightest in our industry about how they are thinking about recreating our world. So in this episode, I have Amada Torruella, and she is a Central American filmmaker, a director, producer, recently DP, and she's also a programmer. She specializes in community storytelling and is shuttling back and forth between El Salvador and Los Angeles. Displaced with her family during the Salvadorian Civil War, Amada's work is driven by the healing of our migration wounds, environmental justice, visual literacy, and culture making with an emphasis on collaboration and experimentation. Amada explores the collective memory, intergenerational trauma, tropical identities, and the global South. Welcome, 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 Amada. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Anjanette.
Oh, wonderful. So listen, we've been having these kind of conversations for a while now, so let's just jump into it and jump on it. One of the reasons why I wanted to have you is because your deep affiliation and passion for community storytelling and community-based programming and that sort of thing. And one of the things that you talked about is how you're integrating things that you learned through doing that work to your own work. So if you could, just talk about what is community storytelling?
Yes, of course. And again, thank you. This is so awesome. It's so good to hear your voice. Your energy is always just exactly what is needed. And
Well,
I think
that,
I always think about running into you at, SDF or New Orleans Film Festival.
That's right.
All these places, and it's always so nice to run into you. So thank you so much for making this happen, and for talking to me about this. So community storytelling. I love to call myself a community storyteller because I believe that it is really important for the members of a community, and a community can be defined in so many different ways. It could be, like a chosen family. It could be, your neighbors. It could be like the arts community that you're a part of in your city. There's so many different ways to define it, obviously.
Sure. And all of us are a part of many different,
Exactly.
are a part of many different communities. And
yes.
then, as you from El Salvador and then Los Angeles, there's that many more communities that we're a part of when we really think about it.
Exactly. We all carry different communities in ourselves, and I think that because there's such an imbalance of power in the media landscape, I think that it's really important for communities to know that they have what is needed. They have what it takes to to be able to frame their own narratives and to get the stories that they really care about and that they feel represent who they are as a community out there, right? And so that's what I see as community storytelling. You know, it's a moment to like look around and see who is there with you. And as a programmer, I've always seen my responsibility as a programmer as someone that is moderating different conversations around the issues and the themes that your community most cares about and is most passionate about. And so I think that it's really important to like see what conversations are we having, you know, because the films are just, they're dreamy, beautiful tools, or sometimes investigative tools, but films are tools to be able to like kick off really important conversations with people in our communities. And it's also a way for the community to like start a dialogue with outsiders or from people that are trying to learn more about, you know, who we are and what we stand for and what we care for, how we're thriving, how we're getting by, what our concerns are, you know? So I think that, yeah, that's the way I see it. I see that community storytelling is about, you know, thinking about those important conversations that are happening around us, seeing like who is there, like who is at the table, making sure that you have different perspectives, different, you know, angles. And that way, you know, you can either put together a narrative or go and document what's happening around you, you know? So I that's something that I think is really important to me, because at the end of the day, like, you know, the media landscape has gotten so expansive, and it really bothers me to think about this, like this idea of scarcity, that there's not enough for everybody, or that there's too much of something. And that's just not true. You know, I don't really believe in that. I think that, you know, that there's so many different ways to like tackle different themes and ideas and issues. And I love exploring with people. I love collaborating with people. I think that when you're a community storyteller, collaboration is key, you know, because it means that you're putting forth, you know, the best tools that you have at your disposal with someone else, you know, and together you're a part of a co-creation of some kind. So that's what community storytelling is for me. And it's something that I learned about while I was working as a programmer in South Carolina. You know, that's where I learned about community storytelling. I think that it's really important, and it's now something that I'm applying for my own, you know, my own native community, my community in El Salvador. You know, it's the place I was born in. It's who I am, and it's also because it's such a small country with such a troubled and complicated history. It's also, the Salvadorian community is a community that, you know, really needs to start being able to frame their own narratives, you know, because we've had so many people coming into our country
and being extractive, like the United States.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, primarily, unfortunately, you know. So, and that's been going on for a really long time. And I think that it's important we need more Salvadoran storytellers, you know. The film industry is definitely an industry in El Salvador that is underdeveloped. And it's, I never, growing up, I migrated to Canada with my family when I was 3. We lived there for 8 years, 7, 8 years. And then we actually moved back to El Salvador. And all my formative years, we moved back when I was like 11. So, my coming of age years, my junior high years, my high school years, that was all in El Salvador. And filmmaking was never something that I thought was an option for me. It was not something that I even knew was a possibility.
Sure.
It's actually something that I understood it was something that I could do and that was needed for people like me to do until I moved to South Carolina, And so I think that's why the South will always occupy like a really special place in my heart. Like I consider the South for me is my film family, it's who I've grown up with. And there's so much that I just really connected with as a Salvadoran immigrant woman. And I think that says a lot,
Right.
About the region. That says a lot about the region. I think it's a special region.
Definitely, because we would definitely say like, what? El Salvador, South Carolina. Wouldn't really having a hard time drawing the line between the two, right? But obviously there's things that you connected with it. I do want to, I was just thinking about when you were talking about community storytelling, I was thinking about like, I'm wondering if there's going to be like a plethora of films because coming out of community storytelling, simply because, in general, people are traveling less, even though like now people are actually starting to travel, at least documentary crews, simply because we're much smaller than, narrative, but documentary crews are starting to, are moving around. But I'm also seeing, so I just was thinking like, oh, is there going to be an emphasis on community storytelling? Because at some point we can't help ourselves. We'll stay inside for so long, but then it's like, well, let's just see what else is out here. So then there's the moment of exploration of like what's around you, because you can always document something, right? So, I mean, have you heard anything about that, or are you thinking anything about more community storytelling, or making this like maybe people don't necessarily realize it, but maybe it's going to be a trend coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot, and I think that just community storytelling is a huge part of my practice. It's not all there is, but I think that it's a big part of it. And I think that there's a lot of, there's going to be a lot more attention to filmmakers wanting to share what's going on locally. And that is because I think that a big foundation of community storytelling is media literacy. And I think that we've if anything, this pandemic, this crisis has uncovered so much for some. There are some of us that already knew that what has been uncovered has been happening, but it's just made it more, it's just centered, the conversation towards all of the things that are broken in our systems, right? And I think that media literacy is a big part of, what will help us move forward from where we are right now, because there's such a overwhelm of misinformation, and media content being shared from everywhere. As I was saying earlier, there's a huge like power imbalance within the media landscape. And that's because you have people telling stories that maybe aren't theirs to tell, right? And you have people that aren't given the access or the tools to be able to share the narratives that they hold as theirs and true, you know? So I think that media literacy, for all of these reasons, is a big like foundation for community storytelling, you know, because at the end of the day, media literacy asks you to think about who is telling the story, why are they telling the story, what audiences are they wanting to share this with, you know? And these are all important questions that we should all be making when it comes to not only, you know, the most like obvious things like film and TV and everything, but also like when you think about just like social media, right? Yeah. Like there's everything is kind of, we've reached a point of just loss of control, I believe. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot being said, but what matters is, you know, the people that are at the receiving end of different things, the people that are living it, the people that have these experiences. And so media literacy is a big part of community storytelling because, you know, the way it works is that you want to think about, you know, what messages are being put out there. You know, are they harming people and communities? Are they stereotyping? Is there more there? Do we want there to be more nuance? You know, there's all these youth programs that are that have been emerging over the past like 5 years, especially in the Southern region. And a lot of it is just, you know, showing youth, especially youth from underrepresented communities, that here's a camera. What is happening in your neighborhood? Tell us, you know, share what is happening with us, because we want to hear it from your perspective. We don't want to hear this constructed version from who knows where.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was thinking about, you know, from time to time I'm on juries and I should always tell them no, that I don't have any time. But of course I say yes, because what I realize after being on one particular jury is that when we are not in the room, you know, when there's not diversity in the room or on the jury, then certain things get overlooked or like things are not considered. And I'm like, this is like right here in our face. Like, what do you mean that's not, you know? So I'm never a bully, but I certainly, you know, look to stick up for certain films or have them be considered. Maybe they don't necessarily deserve the award that's being given. You know, there might be, you know, legitimately stronger products or films, you know, but I do try to reach out to that person and say, listen, you were very strong and keep going or something, anything like that. But on the flip side, I'm looking at films and I'm like, this is so extractive. I just look at your content. I haven't read anything about who's making the film, what the film is even supposed to be about, because I feel like if I'm looking at either your film or your samples, I should be able to discern that pretty quickly. And when I'm looking at something, I can tell. I'm like, not so much about race or different groupings, but I can tell when the storyteller is not connected to the story or to the subject. From my experience, it has overwhelmingly been the dominant culture going into other cultures and telling this kind of extractive story. And so also, you know, in my own work with being a professor, dealing with students, because this is the group who has only grown up with social media. Like they don't know the time before the internet. They don't even know dial-up.
Yeah, that's another issue for sure. Yeah, right? I think media literacy right now is becoming even more important because in a time of like complete crisis for so many different reasons, you just see this generation not being able to handle social media. You know, like social media is not the place to have sometimes conversations that need mediation. You know what I mean? Right. You know, like it's important to be able to directly address people, to directly like have dialogue, you know, so that there can be some sort of growth out of it, you know?
I have several students who during the pandemic, they were like, I just couldn't do it anymore. So they just took themselves out of the equation. Like they got off of social media. There's just like, yeah, no more. I can't do it.
Good for them. That's a hard decision. I just started doing that.
Right. Well, I definitely
I'm taking a little hiatus.
Yes.
I'm learning. I'm learning how to, you know, it's taken so much over all of our lives and the way that we do things. And so I'm trying to learn different ways of using it. You know, it's like, wait a minute. I don't have to like constantly be on there. Right. I don't have to like constantly and right now, especially sometimes it feels like there's this like performative aspect to it, you know? Oh, it's like you're trying to like show who you are. Yeah. It becomes very ill, you know?
Well, one of the things that I say to my students is I'm like, everybody, this is curated. Yes, it's your life and you're sharing various things and you might even be sharing your lunch, your dinner, whatever, but all of that is curated because you're living your best life there. You know, I said, you know, I've been on social media for over 10 years, right? And it's only, I said, you know, I get likes and this, that, and the other. But when I share something really authentic and usually like a little bit painful, boom, you know, that people actually connect with that. And then people are, you know, DMing me or direct messaging, you know, me or private messaging me, you know, I feel your pain or I see where you are, girl, you know, and that sort of thing. So like there's actually more connection when there's when there's vulnerability involved. And you know I have had situations with students where they believe something and I said, okay, let's just step through it. So this person says that they were a part of this film festival. Okay, so hey, everybody, you know what, when I was in person, I could, and actually now I can I'm like, share my screen and I'm like, okay, so let's pull up the film festival. Do we see this person's name here? No. Okay, let's look at their trailer. Does this look like something that would be in this film festival? Maybe, you know, so like actually stepping them through it as opposed to just flat out saying like that, no, that's not possible. And I also start to see that with my niece who is now kind of coming of age. She is like 12, just turned 13. And so, you know, she gets mad with me or she's just like, well, how did you know that was going to be the right answer? I'm like, been doing this for a minute, but you know, to like absolutely step her through the process and say, well, who is this film for? Like, instead of being mad or thinking this or that, like, is this film actually created for you? You know, what is the voice? What is the vision? You know, what's happening here? And really taking a look at that. And so I do agree with you. And as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, media literacy is like a whole thing. And I actually just recently added an aspect of that to my class. It's because I was like, they're amazing. Not getting it, you know, they're not getting it. And so really stepping them through, like, I need you to start processing because essentially that's what we have. But the truth of the matter is that if you actually understand media literacy, then you would be more aware. And so I really feel for those who, you know, are not educated. Not that you're like uneducated, but you're not educated about like media literacy and like how that all works. And
yeah, and then also like not only like going back to like this idea of like who the sources is, like who put the story together. Like I think that like I'm so happy to hear you say that you're like including it in your classes, because that's kind of like, that's going right to the thick of it, that's like you're always so straightforward. You always, when I picture Anjanette, I picture someone that's just like really direct and head on, and including media literacy within your film practice and study. Like it's key, right? Because it's like how hard haven't we been like transforming the way that we talk about media and filmmaking as a whole, right? With like the students that are starting to like navigate and explore that world. Like you want people to understand too that I think that it's important to like build relationships, like what you were saying earlier about like there's no connection. Like I think that we need to just like take a step back and be like, why am I doing this? And how can there be like a relationship building process with the people that are actually sharing so much about themselves with me, right? Yeah,
like
because I think that
participatory media.
Yeah.
Or third world cinema, where the people who these things are being enacted upon are also a part of it. I mean, a little bit of that was with, what is it, the act of killing, where like they were the subjects, and then also they're the actors, like that. Okay, that was like a bit of an extreme, but but it's that whole idea of like, I'm going to make a movie in this community, and I want the people in the community to be a part of it and help to shape it. Like somebody's got to be the head to make like final decisions and dole out money and that sort of thing. But, for people to be a part of it, and then especially if,
because it's their agency,
Yes. And especially if many stories have already been made. So then how are you going to be different as a filmmaker? Are you going to come in and be attractive as well, like with like the other 20 people who have come before? Or how are you going to, how are you going to dig a little deeper and help the community tell their true story in a very nuanced and authentic way? Like you're I feel like it's like now an obligation to do that. Like if you're not going to put in the time and the work to like actually figure it out, then maybe, this is not the film for you. Like you should go on and do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So then you were talking, I wrote this note about like reimagining who's at the table.
Yes.
Who should be at the table when we come through this.
Yes. I was just, I was thinking recently about, I don't remember who it was that said something about, like, we need to like build a new table or something. I'm trying to remember who said this. I'll think about, I'll look it up later, but I was like, yes, like it's not, sometimes it's frustrating because as filmmakers from underrepresented places and communities, we're always just like, we're all applying for the same things, and we're all, trying to just like completely like put the landscape on its head in a way. That's really what we're doing. We're trying to like start sharing content and voices from places that have existed all along, and that really show the depth and the nuance of who we are. And so I think that when it comes to like that table, I think that something that's really important is like to think about like the context of things, right? Like so much of today we just forget about context, about like, you know, what is the story, but also like who are the people that can help you like frame it, you know? Like how do we make our own space where we can like come together and just like protect or vouch for each other, like we're you know, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. And by the way, I quickly looked it up, and it's like so Tyler Perry in 2019 said build your own table. And then also then I saw another one, and it was not attributed to anyone, but it said instead of begging for a seat, build your own table.
Yeah.
So I think that that's definitely, you know, what we're really talking about and what we're imagining for ourselves is that like actually we get out of this what I call like a hamster wheel of like begging. Okay.
Yeah.
No more. Right? Like we set up another table. But then the problem is that like when you build another table, they're like, why is there another table over there? You know, so because it's because I went to a PWI, so you know, predominantly white institution, and it was like, why are all the Black kids sitting at the tables by themselves? Okay, actually, we're sitting together because we are friends. We are not being ostracized. We're actually sitting together because we want to sit together because we're friends, right?
Yeah.
Because you are sitting over there with your friends, and it works out, right? So we're not all. You know,
right? I love that you say that. I love that example so much because right now you're making me think about. Oh my God, sorry, my mind is just like racing.
Go, come on, girl.
Because I'm just thinking about how, you know, there's this idea of like, oh, they're ostracized. Oh, like, you know, it's always associated with some kind of the disenfranchisement of our communities is always also associated to like the moments where we find strength and the moments where we're actually making decisions for ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense. You know, I was doing a conversation. I was moderating a conversation the other day, and someone in the chat box was like, tell us how, you know, how us white filmmakers can like help POC communities to like, you know, to support you. And I looked at the chat box and I didn't have time to like address the question, but I was like, see, that question alone is already a big issue, like on the way of how you're like thinking about things, you know, because like that's where you got it all wrong.
Right. You're still a white saver instead of recognizing
exactly. No, yes.
You have
thank you.
Like we're going to, you need our help.
Exactly.
Actually, we don't. We built Tulsa, we built all these, like, you know,
and also
indigenous people were here before you got here. We were fine in Africa doing our thing, right? And then we build things, and then you come and tear it down, right? And then you force us because, like, actually we're doing too well on our own, right?
Yeah.
So you always have it that, like, we need your help, and, you know, we can't figure it out on our own.
And I saw that as like that already, like the premise that you are coming from is already like, there's
white
so
supremacy
much,
right there. Like,
there's so much like, there's so much wrong with that question and the way that you're like approaching this entire situation. You know, it's not about that we need your help, it's like, if you are a white filmmaker and you work on a story about underrepresented communities, like, better yet, like, how can I build a relationship with those filmmakers, to be a part of what they're doing,
Sure.
like, or how can I, or also, the other issue is I think about also, like, we're also trying to make you see that also whiteness needs to be explored, and whiteness is also not a monolith. And what is your role as a filmmaker within that world? I was talking to a young filmmaker who's one of the Next Doc fellows. He's amazing. He's based in San Antonio, Texas. He's a young Black filmmaker, and he's working on this new doc, his first film, because he's a journalist, and it's about a monument takedown in Texas. I can't give more information, but we were talking about, he was talking about the legacy of this really important Black representative within this institution, and how he was a big part about, kind of like taking down white supremacist statues at this institution. And he kept asking, he said at one point, he's like, this institution has allowed for white supremacist speakers to come to the space and, give speeches. And he was like, so have you ever heard of this guy? It was like, this white supremacist. And I was like, no. And he asked me that like 3 different times. And I was like, you know what? It's interesting. Like, why isn't there more content out there that is telling us who these white supremacists are? Like, why aren't there more filmmakers out there investigating about these leaders within these groups that are causing harm and trying to understand like where we are in history right now, and that's because that's on them to like go out and do that work and investigate and do these stories. But a lot of, I think that a lot of white filmmakers are like shying away from that, and they're not doing it. And it's not
they feel like it's uninteresting. Like, I literally have had people say to me, like, we're uninterested in ourselves, right? But I think also if we actually start to investigate, poor whites in the South, I think there might be some uncomfortableness, right?
Exactly. And it's time to get uncomfortable.
Right. But because then if you look at that, then you have to start to realize that actually it has to do with race, but it's not about race. It's actually about class. And then like, how are you treating people who look like you, who feel entitled to the same things that you have, right? And then they do not have it, right? Because of like where they were born, when they were born, that sort of thing, right? And that you actually start to recognize and like, oh, there is something to, who gets to move up and who gets to be in these different spaces. And that would definitely be uncomfortable. And then also I was thinking about, because there has been a filmmaker who has done the work to realize I actually need assistance. I don't know. Will you help me? And that's only recently because they have made a film. And it's funny because I saw their film and I watched the film and I was like, okay, this is made by a white person who's not a part of this community at all, right? Okay, got it. Then I met the filmmaker separately. It took years before I put 2 and 2 together.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I was cool with the filmmaker, not cool with the film that this person made, right? Then when I realized, and then I saw the filmmaker at an event and I said, that film is problematic. And the filmmaker said, now I do.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
it's like several years, like the film has done film festivals, been online and all this other kind of stuff. And they're getting ready to make their next film. It's also about a similar type community. And I said, it took me a minute to kind of like put two and two together, but that was your film. Okay. I said, I'm going to say this in the most gentlest way possible, but very directly, that film is problematic. And they said, yeah, absolutely. It is. And I was like, wow, it's a new day. Now, can we like multiply that times like 20,000?
And can we we need spaces for these conversations to happen. I'm so happy to hear that was, that you took that initiative and that that person is aware,
Yes. But that's also because we built a relationship over time where when I finally realized, I was like, I'm going to have to say something because I know that this person is better than that. Right? Like this is not who I would have perceived to have made that film. Right? But that's why I was like, not conflicted, but like, I have to say something because this film is not representative of like really who this person is and can be as a filmmaker, right? And it was really wonderful that they were receptive. And so, hey.
And oh, sorry. I just wanted to say before we changed the subject a little bit about like we were talking about white saviorism and about this question about how can like white filmmakers help, and I really just I want to go back to this idea of like when you're like we've gotten because documentary comes from this mindset of colonization, right? We've gotten into this routine that if we're behind the camera, we're like not playing a bigger role within what we're doing. And so when a filmmaker asks that question, it's like it's about thinking about the relationships that you're building. Like wouldn't you want to like not think about it, how can I help, but like start just like building relationships with people around you and seeing how you can be a part of their vision, how you can be a part of that journey. And I think that that's like something that is missing and is really important. And I was just thinking of this other thing I shared that made me think about this right now. Is it okay if I read it to you? It's short.
Go ahead, please.
It's a keynote that was given by filmmaker Lisa Valencia Svensson. She's a queer Filipina documentary filmmaker, and in 2019 she gave this really awesome keynote speech at Hot Docs. And I pulled this quote because I think about it a lot. I meditate about it a lot. And it says, "Now let me frame this from my position as a queer woman of color. If we are members of groups that have been marginalized, and we also have an analysis of the oppression we face, and then we tell our own stories, our storytelling will be framed from very different, rarely acknowledged points of view. Our stories will portray us as always having had agency, as always having resisted our oppression in countless ways, both public and private, as always having seen and understood the forces of domination imposed on our lives. We will not tell our stories in a way that makes it seem like we need help from the privileged. Our stories will show us as fully worthy, as complex, nuanced, and complete human beings." And I was just like, wow, I sit with that a lot. And I thought that her keynote was amazing. I'll send you a link so that you can check it out. But it goes back, I when you told me that story about, why are all the Black students sitting by themselves? It's like they're friends. And, it's not like, oh, poor them, that's not that's not the dynamic that's going to help here. You know what I mean?
Right. But also it's interesting that, if you actually just stood back and watched, we were fine. We're laughing, we're talking, enjoying each other. So maybe it was that you felt left out and you didn't know how to, engage and be a part. Like, they look like they're having fun. I want to have fun too. Okay, well, so instead of saying, why are you all sitting together, saying, is it all right if I come over one day for like 5 minutes? For like 5 minutes. That's all you get, 5 minutes. Can't be a part of our fun. You have to earn this fun. Right? You have to earn it. So, listen, oh my goodness, we're almost at an hour. So, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about indie media arts.
Indie media arts South.
Yeah. Because that sounds yummy, actually.
It's been really great. I'm really happy to be a part of that initiative. So, Indie Media Arts South it was born from a national independent media arts collective created by Sundance Institute and the NEA. And so it's a regional organization that is just working to support organizations across the Southern region. Mm-hmm. Because we found ourselves in a moment of complete, like not only social distancing on like a literal level, but also just mm-hmm. like there was like a fracture that this pandemic created. Mm-hmm. And, so much of our work is about getting together during festivals and convenings to support each other on mm-hmm. our journeys, but also to connect and talk about the things that we care about and that are relevant to the work that we're doing. And so realizing that wasn't something that was going to happen in the in the future, in the near future, there was a organizing committee that kickstarted this off with the support from Sundance and NEA, and it was started sometime in March, and I was asked to come on board in June, mm-hmm. and so these past few months, I've really enjoyed being a part of these conversations with Indie Media Arts South. I serve on the organizing committee right now. Mm-hmm. There's like 10 of us on the organizing committee, everybody based in different parts of the South. We have a great like state representation. Mm-hmm. So there's people from Mississippi and from Alabama and from Louisiana and North Carolina. And so there's a little bit of everything. And we have regional check-ins and to just like touch base. And, mm-hmm. It's just a way to reassure people that we're not working in silos. You know what I mean?
Right.
That we're there if there's anything that you're going through that mm-hmm. is unprecedented, as much mm-hmm. of so many of the things that we're experiencing these days are.
Right.
And we have these working groups, and the working groups are amazing. Right. So as I was saying earlier, there's one working group that is focused on amplifying Southern programming.
Okay.
And supporting, filmmakers in the distribution of their work, and also in helping, those stories go beyond our region. Right. Because something that personally, as a woman of color filmmaker that has, work in the Southern Film Festival circuit, sometimes it's hard to get the work seen by even people in the very region that I consider myself a part of. And it's even harder to like have it go out outside of the region.
Yes, I've had that experience too. Yes.
Yeah. So it's frustrating, and there's a lot of us that feel that way. So that working group is really special because it's trying to find ways to kind of develop our own community partnerships and relationships with online distributors, to see how we can start, making that happen ourselves. There's another working group that I'm a chair of because as a Salvadoran woman, as I mentioned, as I've told you before, counteracting extractive storytelling is really important to me. I've lived my entire life with my Salvadoran identity being associated with violence. And there's just no other way. I've come to realize from my experiences in life, there's no other way that I will be able to change the thought process that happens within people when they know that I'm from El Salvador. And if they know where that is, if they know where that is or what it is, because I have been asked, what is that? If they know what it is, I'm just so used to people immediately asking me about gang violence immediately, and so
that's the narrative in this country.
The narrative. That's and I'm not saying that's a narrative that shouldn't exist, but there's so much more there. There's so much nuance in that narrative. There's so much history and context that needs to be talked about. And I've discovered on my own that there's nothing I can do to counteract that thought process in people and that reaction than to go and tell our own stories. You know what I mean? So that's really important to me. And so I'm a co-chair on that group along with Molly Murphy from Working Films. Yeah. They're really awesome. I love Working Films so much, and they've been supportive of me in different ways. And so we're co-chairs on that group, and it's about seeing how we can put together a best practices guide, how we can start developing community agreements. There's a lot of work that the Detroit Narrative Agency is doing regarding that. And we've taken we've taken their lead on a lot of the practices that they're doing within Detroit, because that's another place that isn't in the South, but that understands what it means to have your stories being told by others that don't really understand what's going on. Or that put out stories that at the end doesn't really affect them. And then there's two other groups that are focused on data collection and putting together platforms that will help not only filmmakers in the South know what's out there for them when it comes to resources, but also for funders so that they can start operating in more inclusive ways. Indie Media South has been great because, at a time when I've been working from home a lot, whether it's writing grants or, putting together festival strategies because I'm a short film producer at heart. So I've been spending a lot of time at home. I don't mind that. I haven't been able to travel, but it's hard and it gets lonely, and it's nice to have that group, to check in and to feel that I'm a part of that community. Because if not, I don't think that I would feel that I'm a part of anything here in the United States,
Right. No, that's, that has me take it to heart because, a lot of people are feeling lost, in various different ways. Right. And so to have a place that you can, touch down with, once a month is it helps to stabilize you. So I know you have to run. So thank you so much. And this is,
Thank you. Part one. Thank you for wanting to chat with me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. It means so much to me.
Seriously, Amada, you were one of the first people that I thought of. I was like, who do I know is looking to make changes and reimagining, and will definitely be taking this time to be thinking about different things, And I was like, yeah, you were part of, the top of the list, definitely,
Good.
So thank you.
Good. Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much, because even though I've been thinking about all of these things, talking to you made me realize how I've been investing in myself more during this time in quarantine. And I thank you for that, because that alone is progress, like I can serve my communities, but I can also serve myself in the process. And I think that really matters. And it's a part of what I think, care is really about, And I was thinking another thing that I've been doing during this time in quarantine that, that wouldn't be possible if I wasn't on this mindset of like, how can I serve myself more, is I founded a collective with friends of mine in El Salvador, and we started a national memorial registry for the lives that have been lost to COVID. And it's that kind of work that really, matters. And it's become so much more because it's now turning into more a collective memory project for El Salvador. Like the loss of COVID is just like the beginning of it. But there's so much more that we need to do in order to understand our country's history, So I don't think that I would be a part of a collective like that if I didn't have this time to like think about how it can, priorities.
Right.
Focus.
Yes. Yes. And that's key. That's what we all have to be doing. So Amada, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for listening in. I invite you to tune into the next episode. Until then, dream bigger for our future forward.